Hello and welcome to episode 19 of Storymode. Yeah, we're back again. If you haven't seen this show before, it's pretty simple. Think of it like a book club. We all played a game over the past month and a half. I say month and a half for one of us specifically, but the rest of us all played it in the last 48 hours. And we're gonna talk about a little game called Empathy: Path of Whispers, which literally nobody has played. Because unfortunately it hasn't sold very well. Depending on who you ask.
Unfortunately.
We'll get into this. So once again, if you haven't seen the show before, this is a spoiler show. We're gonna be talking about everything, literally everything. I wouldn't call this a review show. We're more just here to talk about stories specifically. However, things happen. So, first off, I would just like to real quick say hi to my co-hosts, Eggman and Lewis. How you two doing today?
Doing all right. Could have used a little bit more sleep. I finished this game at after midnight last night, so
I haven't slept yet. I've been awake for 26 hours. Okay. And then our lovely guest host, Mott Games. How you doing?
Hello. I'm doing good.
Cool.
Thanks for having me.
I set up the audio levels correctly. I did that like while we were all muted. I was like, I forgot sound check. It's okay. We're fine. This is fine. So once again, this is a spoiler show, and I think without further ado, let's just start knocking this one out. So, while Eggman starts to place his hand firmly on his forehead, this game is broken as balls. Holy crap! I think we've played games of middling quality, right? We've played games that are intentionally bad. We've played games that are intentionally good. We've played games that are kind of broken. I played a game with a flying garbage can a couple weeks ago, or a couple months ago. I don't know where to start. Who wants to? Anybody have anything to say? This is
so.
Do we want to start with the story synopsis? Because I can try to give like a
let's start with that.
Let's do
30-second version, which is it starts off like kind of towards the end of this apocalyptic event. So as it's explained, basically people just went mad. No one knew why. No one really knew how. People would just go insane, start killing people.
It's an everybody's gone to the rapture, the happening situation.
Yeah,
yes,
pretty much. From what I understand, you get enlisted by one of the few survivors to basically try to stop the machine. And then when that fails, you get sent back and you have to kind of figure out why this is all happening. And there's this story that unfolds throughout the time because you could hear like snippets of what happened in the past.
The partner that Lewis is talking about is the narrator for the game, who is of dubious origin. He never appears in the game. He's just kind of there.
I think it's because the developers are just terrified of modeling people. I'm starting to think that these first-person experience games do this intentionally so that they don't have to model faces. See Everybody's Gone to the Rapture, for example. Or
I'd said What Remains of Edith Finch did it to some extent. That there were definitely points where it's like, yeah, they intentionally avoided showing people.
People are scary in video games, man. But anyways,
they're hard.
Do you have any other things that you want to throw out in your story synopsis?
Well, I guess as you go along, you start finding these machines. They have kind of this, I forget what you call it, like the
almost
Edison coil thing.
Almost a Myst-like quality to the machines.
Yeah.
Have you ever played Myst?
And you end up kind of finding you have to turn them all on. And these machines end up getting related in the very end of the story, that they're kind of amplifiers to this big central machine.
Which is literally a giant gun. They describe it as walking down the barrel of a gun.
Yeah, the narrator says that it's like walking down the barrel of a gun. Like, how people went mad, like, it was very hard to piece together. I played through the game about twice.
Something about
and here is what I got.
DNA.
Here's what I got from why people went mad based on two playthroughs. They had this theory that of kind of a hive mind like thing. They called it the noosphere. I was looking down at my notes. that this kind of noosphere that people sort of have a hive mind thing. And so they did experiments messing with people's emotions and trying to connect people, and they end up creating these machines. And something happens, their test goes too wild, or maybe they intended to do it on the city scale and things just got out of hand. And they basically tried to remove negative emotion and ended up removing it to the point where people couldn't feel grief or, you know,
Have you ever seen
terror
the movie Equilibrium?
I have not.
It's a sci-fi film where the whole thing is they cannot hear an echo. But it's a sci-fi film where the oops, broke. I think that fixed it. Yep, that did. Okay. It's a sci-fi film where they erase their emotions, essentially, by taking a pill. And then there's people who don't take the pill, and then they're off of the... Anyways, I'm not going to talk about Equilibrium. Welcome to the Equilibrium podcast. It's a movie that came out before The Matrix, and The Matrix took a lot of stuff from. It's a good film with gun martial arts. I'm sleepy. Continue.
So we should mention the main story interaction of the game, which is that there are these objects that appear kind of stylized. They are lit up or
kind of glitchy.
Look a little blurry. And you have this scanner device, which you can click on them. And then you have this little wavelength, and you have to adjust the amplitude, frequency, and wavelength of the wave that you see, basically, until it matches what is shown on your scanner. I found this to be an incredibly tedious mechanic because it just kind of delayed having to interact with the story elements.
Actually, let's just pass around now, since we're on that mechanic real quick. Mott, what did you think of the scanner mechanic? Because you played the game before they added in the ability to turn it off completely.
Wait, there was an ability to turn it off?
They patched that in post-release.
That's the most recent patch.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
1.0.3 for future reference.
I played this before the game was released, and before it was released, it was a lot harder. And the first time I used this machine, it took me like 25 minutes to work out how this thing worked. But once I got the hang of it, it was okay. And then obviously they released the game and it got a lot easier. It would snap a lot into place, which it didn't do before. But previously, it had to be exactly on the line to get it to work, and it was a nightmare.
Oh, wow. I would have given up if that was the case, man.
Yeah, it was pretty ridiculous. But once I got it, I got really quick at it, and it was a few seconds each time. But yeah, like you said, because this game's like 5-6 hours long, and it's like the only thing that you have with you in the game. So for the first hour and a half, 2 hours, yeah, it's a novelty. Oh, this is a pretty cool mechanic. And then after a while, it grinds.
It's incredibly repetitive.
I think you need to collect a lot of the stuff in the game to progress. So you have to use this thing. It's not like you can't just ignore stuff.
I would like to put forward, technical issues aside, my biggest issue with the fundamental design of this game. The most interesting portion of this game to me, aside from the weirdly convoluted Russian dialogue story thing, is the set pieces. If you look at the screenshots of this game on the Steam page, which I can drop into chat in a minute, there are some really cool set pieces, which is what caught my eye initially when I decided I wanted to play it, and I put it forward as a option, because it's like, man, there are some really neat looking environments, and you're actually not looking at those environments. You're staring at this little dial, which is pointing you towards objects, which is essentially a tiny little mini-map, and you're pointing this thing through the world. So imagine you're not actually looking at this world. You're looking at this world through this tiny little wall hack, and you're just like, okay, well, that's the direction I'm walking now, so I'm just gonna go this way. And that's literally the whole game. And then when you get to a place after walking across the way too large environments, that's another thing I want to talk about, is the environments are too damn big. You get your thing of dialogue after solving this obnoxiously boring puzzle, which isn't hard, it just takes time. It's, as Mott said, a grind. You solve this, you get your dialogue, and you move to the next item. Now, as I mentioned before, they did add in a menu option, which Eggman pointed out last night, thank Christ, which gets rid of this the whole mechanic. And because I'd managed to completely break my save file by falling out of the world using the little scanner thingy in the sewers. I'll explain how I did that in a minute. But you can actually get yourself stuck in the world and then immediately respawn infinitely and then overwrite all of your save files is essentially.
Ooh.
So they added in the ability to turn it off, which surprisingly enough allows you to progress through the game a lot quicker because you basically you're scanning even more, and instead of it also breaks the game because the way the game is designed is that you do this puzzle and then you walk over to the next item, and while you're doing the puzzle and the next item, the first dialogue is still playing, and I think that's why they added in the mechanic is to fill time. So I would find myself tapping on an item because that's literally all you need to do now is click on it. If you have this setting on, you click on the item and then you look over at the next one and the dialogue's still playing. You can't click on the next one until the dialogue stops playing. So I'm just sitting there.
Yep.
Click. So not
Spam
only
clicking on the items until the thing goes away, until the dialogue is done.
So you end up with the option of either solving mundane puzzles. It's like every single time you need to play tic-tac-toe against the computer, essentially. It's easy. You see how it's done, but it's just kind of annoying. Why am I still doing this? And I think that is just a fundamental design flaw in the game. Really.
There was also...
I want to be the kind of dissenting opinion here. I mean, I don't really have too much problems with that kind of busy work in the games. I mean, if I did, I'd be a hypocrite when talking about To the Moon. But I
actually think To the Moon's a better game than this, and I hate To the Moon.
Well, okay. But ignoring our opinions on To the Moon, I brought it up because there are some interesting parallels that are worth discussing in terms of the busy work. Because
it's a reoccurring plot point of our show. Come on. Just go ahead. It's an inside joke.
Anyways, we the scanner thing, I never had a problem with it. It was fairly quick. It helped to distinguish between the mandatory parts and the optional parts, because that's worth noting. There are basically three things you can collect. One are the mandatory ones, which appear on your scanner. There are the optional ones that don't appear on your scanner, but also do the same sort of thing. They give you a dialogue. And there are notes, which just present the text on the screen.
And they aren't indicated in any way. They might be in a pile of other paper.
I think they're intentionally hidden. So there's some cases where they're bloody obvious, but I just kind of gave up looking for them because they.
But yeah, I mean, if you're just following the scanner and not actually looking around you, you're going to miss all these optional ones, which play a huge role in the storytelling. That those optional bits actually help explain what's going on.
Yeah, if you only got the mandatory ones, which by the end I was kind of doing, and then if I just saw an optional one, I would kit it, obviously. But if I had just gone through and only gotten the mandatory ones, I would have had no clue what's going on.
Yeah, they relied way too heavily on notes to tell the story. Because I hate reading in games. If I find a note, I either briefly look at it or just don't look at it at all. So I missed a lot of the story because of that. I feel like there should have been automatic voiceovers in a lot of places in this game to kind of progress the story. And also, I feel like the game it's a linear story, right? You have to go through it in one way. But this scanner makes it kind of I don't know, it feels like
almost.
Yeah, does that make sense? Like,
no, it makes sense because you can get bits of the story in different orders too.
In completely different orders. You could play this game 10 times and get the story mixed up in 10 different ways, and it gets confusing. It really does.
That's one of the kind of the bigger issues that, when you pick it up, you're going to pick it up in a random order, and it's going to be hard to follow it. And the only way to really try to sort it is to go back, and you can get a log of every single memento you've picked up, the mandatory and optional ones. But once you do that, they're no longer spoken. It's just huge walls of text. And they're only sorted by the person who said it.
I wanted to talk about this a little bit too. You can get the mementos in any order, and the ones that appear on your scanner they appear in groups. So like you'll get 5 or 6 that appear on your map once you complete a set. And once you complete a set, you'll get to this little memory that makes the whole screen go kind of bluish white, and you'll have to redo one of the actions that one of these audio logs indicates to you. I had a really, really big problem with this, which was that there was always, on one of the like 6 or 7 locations, there was one that was the last one. But you could get them in any order. So once you got the whatever one was remaining, you would go back to the position for the one that was the last one. And because of this, in the, was it still the first act? Yeah. So the first act on Atlas Island or Atlas Park, there's this guy named Arturo or something.
Hold on, let me grab my notes.
Can I
Andropov? Arturo.
Yeah, Arturo.
Yeah.
And he was sleeping under a tree. There were 2 other objects there. One of them is a mandatory object that you need to complete the act. I picked up what was it? Whatever the memento item was for that one.
Most of the mementos in that area are like scraps of cloth and like rocks. Like they're not exactly like there's the gun sequence
being said.
One of them was like a clipboard. The mandatory one was a clipboard. The optional one, I think, was a thing of sticks or maybe like something that looked like a stick.
There's like a few pick-upable items.
Anyways, so I got that last one and I got teleported up to the top of the cliff where the military base is. I had no clue that I missed something there, and I spent about an hour wandering around. I had to go look at a walkthrough to go look and see, oh, there was a mandatory object that doesn't appear on my scanner that I missed right next to the one that I got, which if I had been teleported back to that location after the scene ended, would have been fine.
In that same act, there's a door that you need a key card to get through. It took me about 40 minutes to find that key card.
Yeah, it was the same
thing
problem with me for this object.
I had that exact same thing in every single mission of this game. It happened once
that I got in order.
Yeah. Every single time, and it was that padded out the game for me. I think I probably spent about 2 hours trying to find that last piece, and I actually thought the game was broken at one point.
I genuinely think I would have liked this game more if it was 2 hours shorter, a strict linear path a la Dear Esther or, What Remains of Edith Finch type thing, more focused on the set pieces and the storytelling instead of the prop hunting. Yeah. Or if the environments were a third of the size.
I think there was way too many people involved in this story as well.
Yeah.
There not being any visuals of these.
I don't think it was the people that was
list
the problem.
Of the people in the game. This is like that's a list of all the names.
I don't think the number of characters is the problem. I think that the problem was there was only like 4 or 5 voice actors.
Yeah. No, there were like a couple dozen. Like there was a unique voice actor for. I watched the credits and counted them.
They all sounded the same.
They all did sound the same because this takes place in a post-apocalyptic world, but most of the people have Russian names and they're given god-awful Russian accents that you can't tell apart. Without the subtitles, this game would be unplayable. You can't tell the characters apart by their voices. It's impossible. I will say that
or if you're me and can't. Sorry, or if you're me and you can't keep track of names, and the names in the subtitles don't help you because you can't connect to anything. I literally had to go to the journal and look over the chat to figure out, oh, the person who said that also said that, so therefore those things are connected.
Yeah, I feel that's why they added the journal. I think the journal was a last.
Did they add it? Was it in your build?
I don't think I ever used the journal in the pre-release one. No,
I didn't even know the journal was a thing.
I forgot about
you had to press J. I think it was J on the keyboard, if I remember.
It was
right.
Y on the controller. That's worth mentioning. They patched in partial controller support. So I played this game with a controller and a mouse for a handful of things.
With the controller for about 30 seconds, and I was like, nope. Just nope. I will say
the camera was terribly slow on the controller.
I will say one glowingly positive thing about this game. The FOV goes up to 120. But it defaulted to 60 on my computer, and I was like, oh my god, I can't play this game. And then I just like went whoop, and I was so happy. I don't know.
Yeah.
Best thing I can. You can't rebind the controls, so there's that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you go through collecting these momentums and getting really loosely connected context clues. And it's like, oh, there's this gun smuggling operation, but there's also these drugs. And then you go to the next act, and now there's this conglomerate and an oligarch, and they're doing stuff. But there's another person who's trying to make a nice community, and there's these machines that you're doing and everything, and you're turning them on, but they might be the thing. It's so hodgepodge. It's really difficult to follow, even if
There's
you're trying
too much going on.
Yeah.
That's the short version. There's too many side stories and little details and stuff. It's a mess. Like, I mean, there's things I still don't understand. Like, I wrote down a list of all the characters that I found dialogue options for by act, and there's lots of duplicates, but I don't understand where some of these duplicates came from. Like, there's a Mrs. Savincic who appears all the way in Act 1, Act 2, and over in Act 3, and I didn't understand how she got there and what her role was getting there.
If anything.
Well, I think the story was that they escaped to the park first of all, because it was higher up. They thought that the higher up you were, the safer you were from the thing that was trying to get them, because that's why at the beginning everything was like raised off the ground, right? At least that's what I got from it. And then they moved further and further, and then there was that other like walled in area.
There's actually a lot of really interesting visual storytelling in the opening area, which is, as I said, a shame that you're staring at this dumb little device. Because the opening area, if you look off of the platform, essentially just to like describe this to people listening, what it looks like is it's this really tall, like you're essentially on stilts. All buildings are like 100 stories above everything else, just on essentially like cranes almost. Everything's sitting on scaffolding, and you look down and you can see like this cityscape as far as the eye can see. The skybox is ugly, but this cityscape is kind of neat. With like these weird, almost Tim Burton-esque, like huge trains like flying through these monolithic skyscrapers with these tiny little houses on the top. I don't know. That was all really cool. And then hearing the dialogue later on in the game where they're saying, oh, they were moving further up because they thought that whatever was making people crazy is heavier than oxygen, so it would go down. I don't know. That was some really like there are cool ideas in this game, which makes me sad.
I think that would have been something that's perfectly fine to tell at the beginning of the game. It starts making you ask questions, whereas at the beginning I was just kind of like, this looks cool. Why are we here again? Remind me?
Yeah, no, I mean, when I had that revelation later on in the game, it was like, oh, that's why the city looked so weird. And that's why even the architecture is experimental when the narrator's being super positive and bubbly about everything. And it's like, what is wrong with you, dude? Everybody's dead. Like, actually, this isn't... Go ahead.
No, it's okay. But that first area kind of sells the game short. So the very beginning sequence, I kind of alluded to this when I mentioned the summary. There's kind of this cutscene with hand-drawn parts, which is really weird. That kind of tells that people went mad. We need to stop it.
Moment, by the way.
It dumps you in a random room with a big red button and the scanner you have to pick up. So you pick up the scanner, you hit the button.
Dialogue in the game right there.
Yeah. Something doesn't quite go right. You're back at your house, apparently. You go up through the attic door, and then you're like inside of this broken room with the door kind of missing, and you look out, and you're on this kind of floating landscape and a whole bunch of kind of disparate broken things. And I was like, okay, am I in a dream sequence or like sort of dream sequence? Like, I'm assuming this is not real. This is not something that's supposed to physically exist. I am in a mental space, maybe. Not quite that, but just the sense that like what I'm seeing is figurative. And the further along I went, I realized, no, that was supposed to be literal. And now I'm confused. So that first part really sold it short, that if they wanted to make it fantastical, they should have toned it down at the beginning and made it more absurd. Like, it started absurd and then went more normal. Like, building a city to a side of a cliff is weird, but it at least makes more sense than giant railways basically floating in the sky.
See, I had two experiences with the first scene or the first mission. in the game, because the first time I played it obviously was pre-release. That video at the beginning didn't exist. So I went into that first bit with none of that story at the beginning. So I was kind of like, oh, this is pretty cool.
That is really interesting.
Going through this. And then the second time I had to replay it, I was like, oh, what's this? This is a little bit of story I didn't get last time. And I was like, oh, okay then.
Funny, now that you
confusing.
mention that, when I was playing that and I saw that opening cutscene, I had negative opinions about this game from the get-go, okay? Click on the play button on Steam. Iceberg Interactive, which is, for those of you who don't know, I didn't know this game was published by Iceberg, by the way. Iceberg puts out some alright games, and they put out some okay games, and then they put out some absolutely goddamn atrocious games. They're not what I would refer to as a respected publisher. They're kind of like Nordic were a number of years ago, before Nordic bought THQ and is trying desperately just to become THQ. But anyways, they do have a few gems under their belt, don't get me wrong, but not a great track record. So, Iceberg Interactive. Then the logo of the game, and like no animation. And I know that's a very nitpicky thing to say, but like, you plop your logo there, it looks like someone just put it into MS Paint and cut all the colors out and just plopped it on there. It just goes boom. And that
it's also like louder than anything in the game.
It doesn't scream
really
production value at you or anything. And then you get into this menu. The menu's okay. You can't rebind the controls. That's bad. And then you click play.
No manual graphics options. You can only do ultra, high, medium, or low.
That's never a good sign. To me, that cutscene felt unfinished. I don't know if that's a style they were going for, but I genuinely found that whole cutscene just seemed... It didn't feel done. Like, I felt like that should have been more animated. There's something about it that just felt off to me, and I can't quite place it. And that is very interesting that Mott's saying that it was put in post-release.
Yeah. Because originally,
when you got it, press copy.
Originally, I woke up in the room and I had to go through the door, and then got told to press the button.
Yeah.
And then I woke up in that house and had to go through, get a key or something, if I remember rightly. But yeah, the second time that popped up, and it was really confusing because I think I'd played like 90% of the first act before release, and then I had a game-breaking bug, and they didn't tell me how to fix it. There was this one bit where you had to, you were like a investigator, and there was like a few things in the room you had to pick up.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. In the first act.
I know what
Yeah,
you're talking about.
What happened was
on the table. You have to put all the evidence on the table.
Yeah. I picked up one, and when you unlock it, the audio plays, right? So the audio played, and then when I went to go pick up the next one, there was no audio. So it like wouldn't let me pick anything else up. Like the whole story like system had broken. So yeah, they just said wait for release, and then I did, and then there was extra story. I was like, well, this is weird.
I would say it doesn't surprise me that it was kind of added after the fact, because there are two of those for the record. Yeah, there's one at the beginning of the game and one at the very end. And some of the things I noticed was that the style was very different, and it felt rushed. Like the very first part, like it tries to explain what's going on, but it's 20 seconds, and then it just doesn't keep the momentum going. The dialogue once you exit that cutscene doesn't do a good job of saying, yes, this happened, yes, we're needing to fix it. And it felt like I got lost somewhere in there. That cutscene kind of faded away too quickly, and I got confused. But the last one, it was fast, it was that weird style, and it made no sense. Like, it felt like it
ends.
Like if it was there, I guess it was to make some sort of conclusion, to make it feel like you actually had a success story. And the way they chose to do that was talking about a mother crying over a dead baby and a slave that liked being a slave or something.
I think that it was supposed to be referencing characters. that
I don't know.
I think that that's referencing characters from each act. That's what I think that is.
If it's each act, why are there 2?
I don't know.
There are 5 acts.
Lewis. I don't know.
And that's kind of the problem. It's such a pitiful conclusion because it makes no sense.
The slaves, I almost want to just stream that, but the slave section, I almost feel like was the whole cult thing. That's what it connected to in my brain, was in Eagleview, the underground cult area, the worshiping the machine thing. That's what I connected those two. I was like, does that relate to that? Did I miss something in there? And then the mother crying over the baby, I assumed was the train station, but because the Selma killed her daughter person, who was then in the lab as well with Selma, or with Joyce, or whatever her name was.
That actually, whole thing. Yeah, Joyce, I'm so confused what happened to Joyce, because I thought she fell off a cliff in Act 1.
She did fall off a cliff in Act 1 and die. But also, apparently we're time traveling or something. Because you push the button at the beginning to start the whole thing, right? Or are you stopping it? What? Okay. What
my
happens when you push
understanding
the
is
button
that you're
the first
trying
time?
to stop it when you hit that button, but you haven't turned on the 3 machines, so it didn't work.
And then
that's my understanding.
Why do you appear in your house? Did you go back in time?
That is a very good
Did you
question,
go forward
indeed.
in time?
No.
Are you in a memory loop? Does this exist?
It does work though, doesn't it? Because the sirens sound. At the beginning, yeah, you press the button and the sirens sound on.
Is this a Groundhog
But
Day
the siren's
situation?
not the same siren that goes on at the very end. I don't think that siren turns on at the end of the game.
So
something changed. And I think it was turning on the machines.
What I got from it was the end was the beginning. At the end, he was still under the control of the machines, right? And he was pressing the buttons to do something with the machine. Because there was the people in the seats, right? So he'd pressed the buttons to do whatever it was, and then it had gone wrong, or the machines had shut down or something.
I'm with Mod on this one. I think
and it had killed him, and then he went back, and he was now dead at the beginning of the game.
And haunting the boy's mind?
Because when at the end you were under the control of the machines, right? So you don't know what the hell is going on. But now because it's reset you, you're dead, you've gone back to when you press that button at the end of the game. And now you can live through the experiences and find out what actually happened through the memories of the others. Does that make any sense?
Maybe, but
yes,
I don't
but
like
no.
the idea of it being a time travel thing. It just doesn't add up, because then you'd be reading memories from the future when the event has happened.
No, I don't think. No. Everything that happened during the game had already happened, right? But you're going back as a dead person to find what happened to you as an alive person.
So this is everybody's gone to the rapture then.
I'm with Mod on this one. I think that the events in Acts 1 through 5 take place in reverse chronological order, because as you continue through the game, we see Salma and Pavel, who are not husband and wife. They're live-in doctor friends.
They're like living scientist friends.
Yep. And you see them also at the end of the game.
Kid.
And so at the beginning of the game, we see that Joyce jumps off a cliff and dies, or something happens and she dies.
Selma killed her, I think. I'm 90% sure Selma.
Whatever happened, doesn't
went
matter.
Crazy and killed her.
We see her at the end of the game. We have mementos that have her voice in them and are describing stories in the facility at the institution. And then as we're seeing we get clues throughout the game. You go from Atlas Park to the railroad station to which is Chernosk, to Eagleview, and throughout that we see that people are moving further and further away. It's kind of like your point where the game should have been in actual chronological order, starting from the beginning, maybe, but without maybe the revelations that you get in the institution.
Maybe. I don't like the idea of it being reverse chronological order. And there's one
reverse, isn't it?
There's one piece of evidence I want to bring up, which is I believe Andropov was the scientist in Act 1 in the Atlas Park. There's this whole thing. So there's a machine underground, right? and there's a note in his office, which you can get to, that basically lists off the 4 machines. He says 2 are deactivated, which we can assume are the ones in the train station and in Eagle View. And there's one that's still releasing a distress signal, which we can assume is the lab, and his was still operational. And then he went to turn off his. And so he disassembled it, and that's why you have to find all the parts again.
Huh.
I don't
So
think this.
that one was the last one turned off, but it's also the first one you turned on, which makes it confusing for reverse chronological order.
So I don't think that this conversation is going to get us very far because, like we've mentioned before, the clues that we're given are terrible, and you could probably make cases for both ways, honestly. I think it's just important to mention that we've found that this might be the case.
My theory is that it's nonlinear. It's not forwards or backwards. It's concurrent.
Okay. Like I said, I don't think this conversation is very productive.
Okay.
Um,
Maybe we should get on to the glitches?
Can I tell you how I broke the game the first time?
Sure.
So in Atlas Park, when you're in the sewers of Atlas Park and you're underground, there's a point where you have to do the one platforming sequence in the game for some reason, sort of. When those are like little bzzz, bzzz,
Oh yeah, the water one.
Oh, the water jets, yeah.
Are they jets? I thought they were electricity.
they're
Anyway,
water jets.
it's kind of funny because actually in Atlas Park you can look down and actually see that, and it like alludes that, oh, you're gonna have to do that. They do that several times in the game. I think that's really cool. I like
Except
that.
it's in the completely opposite direction though.
Wait, what?
When you look down the grill,
Yeah.
it's down the bottom by the house, right?
Yeah.
And then when you actually go underground, it's the other way.
Huh.
You
Okay.
go to the right.
That's really funny. I didn't.
Well, that's interesting. Suggests that there might be a loading zone somewhere that's hidden.
It's not actually underneath that, I don't think.
That's really interesting.
Because you go
actually.
down and then you go down the right to get to that.
I don't know. The whole
Level
tunnels are so twisted and curvy.
This game was
I could never...
designed by fucking crazy people. Okay.
Yeah.
But
Anytime I was underground, I just gave up on actually keeping track of where I was going.
So there's a
and so I always
mechanic
just hugged the right wall.
in this game where if you fall off a cliff, because there's lots of big cliffs, you die, respawn, and the game autosaves. Okay. Which is horrible, by the way, because you can get into an infinite loop and overwrite all of your autosaves almost immediately. I somehow managed to hit the button that pops up your scanner right when the thing hit me. My scanner popped up. I bugged through the wall, floated out of bounds, and respawn, out of bounds, and it overwrote all my saves.
Yeah. I want to make a comment on something there in terms of story. I'm not sure you die, and this is actually something that's really confusing to me because I thought maybe that is a failure state where it basically pretends it didn't happen, because what happens when you fall for a certain distance or gain a certain amount of speed or whatever, your vision kind of becomes static like a TV, and then you appear back where you were when the static fades.
You get an achievement the first time you do that.
Maybe, but I also triggered a line of dialogue from doing that.
Yeah,
which makes me think
or it was worth trying or something.
Yeah, which makes me think that that is canonical, which then raises the question, what is that? What is going on? And I don't know. That makes it even more confusing.
There's a lot going on in this world. I would really like a documentary on what happened with this game in development. I would watch that documentary.
To be fair to the devs, they are still patching it. You know, they're on 1.0.3, and they seem to be making concerted effort to fix a lot of the issues. Like they changed the autosave count from 1 to 15 to try to help fix some of the soft lock issues. They allowed manual saving, which apparently didn't exist until 1.0.2.
There was no saves before release at all.
Yeah.
Jeez.
So when I bugged out,
like you
I didn't
couldn't
return.
save the game, or there was only one
was
save slot.
There was no saves. There was no auto saves. If you bugged out, I bugged out like I mentioned, and I backed out, and then there was no saves. That's why I waited for release to play it again. But that achievement you mentioned earlier about falling off the cliff, That was also a bugged out achievement. I remember reading a review of someone saying, I have one more achievement to get. Apparently I'm supposed to fall off a cliff. I've jumped off every single cliff to get this achievement and I cannot get it. Where do I go? I don't know if that review is still on there, but I read that and it was pretty funny. So yeah.
But
Yeah, go ahead.
the other major patch I noticed was they added in partial controller support. Like it didn't have any controller support at launch, and they're adding it in. So good on the devs for at least realizing they have a broken game and trying to mitigate it.
As long as we're talking about bugs, my main bug that I got was in Act 2. I was trying to activate the machine for that act in the... Or no, it was in Act 2 at the train station. And I had all the stuff. I completed the puzzle. I looked up the solution online. Also, the puzzle is not clearly marked on the wall. It's everything else in the game is lit up, and that's just kind of sitting there. So I finished all that, and it's just like, nope, it's not turning on. You're not getting the cutscene. And so I was like, I literally don't know what to do. And so I just went back to my oldest save that I could find and redid everything, and that fixed it. And it was super frustrating because I spent about 2 hours on that one puzzle.
You're referring...
and watching.
That's the pipe puzzle, right? On the wall.
The puzzle, the electricity puzzle circuit board thing?
Yes.
I
The one
broke
I
it too.
didn't realize was a thing.
I broke it too. Do you want to know how I broke it?
How did
If
you
you
break it?
solve the puzzle before all the machines are on, it breaks the thing and undoes the switch underneath it, and you can't flip it again and turn the machine on.
Oh, okay. That might have been what happened to me then, because I think I put, because this was the one you got to have 3 different items and put it. No, that wasn't that one.
No, that the 3 different items was Act 1. The 3 different switches and then solving the pipe puzzle is Act 2. Act 3 was making your way down to the tunnels. Act 4 was activating the machine and then going across the drawbridge.
Is there
Yeah.
something that like pops up on the screen that says what act you're in? Because I have zero
Nope.
recollection of that. Then
No, basically, if you go to the journal, you can click on the acts and it'll say which ones you have dialogue for. And so you only know which act you're in by which acts you have dialogue for. It's the stupidest thing, but Act 1 ends when you go down that ladder in the sewers. So when you open up that hatch and you go down the ladder, that's the end of Act 1. End of Act 2 is when you get on the train. End of Act 3 is when you go down the other ladder that's beneath the trap door in the house. The end of Act 4 is when you go across the drawbridge. And the end of Act 5 is when you hit the button. That's the delimiters.
So my other game breaking experience was before the drawbridge at the end of Act 4.
Mm-hmm.
It puts you into what I'm presuming is kind of like it's like a separated zone of the actual place that you're in, if that makes sense. Like an instance, right? And you have to avoid the lights and pull this lever.
It's the flashback is what I referred to it.
The first time I got there, I didn't see the lever, so I thought I had to like somehow climb over the little building that was there. So I jumped up and I fell through the map into the non-instance area, and I was back in the tunnels, which I couldn't get out of. I was stuck in the actual loaded tunnel of the cult area or whatever it was. So yeah, I had to restart, and that was fun.
Yeah. My technical glitch is funny because everyone's talking about, soft locks and getting stuck. I skipped a portion of my game my second time through. What had happened, and I almost don't want to mention it because I feel like this skip could be used to make a really incredible speed run. But what had happened was, so the end of Act 4, you collect all the items, and then you get into that kind of flashback, and you have all the spotlights, and you're trying to get to the drawbridge. And there are 2 ways to end that cutscene. You can either get to the bridge or get caught by one of the spotlights. Now, what I somehow managed to do was get caught by a spotlight before I triggered the flashback. I was just trying to walk, through the tunnel into one of the rooms to get one of the items, and it was like, he's trying to go across the drawbridge. And then a door opened, and I went on to Act 5.
Wait, so I got caught by the spotlights too, and it just kind of continued for me. Like it lowered the drawbridge. Did anybody else complete it without getting caught?
Yeah,
I mean, I
didn't
did
get
my
caught.
first time through. Well, actually, I didn't get caught, but I got caught in the memory.
So the first time I did it, I avoided the spotlights, then fell through the roof. The second time, I avoided the spotlights, pulled the lever, and then went on.
It sounds like
So,
we're directing an action film.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I never pulled the lever. I just got caught by the spotlight, and it's like, okay, go across the bridge. I'm like, oh okay,
Yeah,
I'll
same.
go, I guess.
I got hit by the light, and then like I kind of almost got like a fade to light kind of thing, like boof, like blinding light, and then bridge was down. I was like, hey, man.
Yeah,
That's a weird thing.
I think that may be one of the worst scripted ones, in part because I was somehow able to trigger it before I actually triggered the spotlights to actually turn on by somehow having them on.
So I'd like to bring up the narrator because I had a lot of problems with the narrator. My biggest problem, perhaps, was that he, at the same time, appeared to not know what the hell we were doing. Like, oh, I guess we need to turn on this machine. And then we turn it on and it's like, okay, let's go do the next thing. Whenever you pick up mementos, he often has like a thing that he follows up with. And sometimes it just doesn't relate at all to what the memento was about. He states completely obvious things.
He'll randomly ramble and like put out like weird quotes that are kind of unrelated. Although I do kind of like the one about screaming. There was a loud screaming sound. That one was cool. I don't know. I like that quote.
Yeah. And then he also apparently didn't feel it relevant to mention that the machines that we're turning on are the ones that are screwing with people's nature and emotions. It's like, was that important?
He does allude to that when you turn on the one that's underground. He's like, it's like the sound of 1,000 people talking. Just me? Oh.
So that narrator was, I can pretty much guarantee, programmed wrong. Like the way that he speaks. Like I said, the first time I played through the first episode, I had the narration in the exact same order as the second time, even though the second time I picked up objects in a different order.
That's hilarious.
So he was narrating in sequence by objects you pick up. So obviously they presumed everyone was going to pick up the objects in the same linear order because of the way they placed them using the machine, I presume. But yeah, both times I got this narration in the exact order, which really confused me. Because the first time I was all over the place. The first playthrough, I was up the stairs, down the stairs, picking stuff up in random orders, and narration made no sense whatsoever. And the second time I followed the machine, because I by that time realized that was what I was supposed to do. And I'm pretty sure it was in the exact same order and it made more sense. So yeah,
okay,
I'm pretty sure they programmed
that makes a lot of sense. Because it's like you'd pick up an item and it'd be like, okay, here's a little blurb for that item. And sometimes the items you're picking up are rocks, just rocks. And they're like, okay, what does this relate to anything?
Yeah.
And then it's like, the narrator's like, oh, this is a blurb about the town. Cool. I mean, they're useful blurbs, but they don't make any sense.
Mm-hmm. Because the moment I realized this was the first playthrough of the first one. You know, you said you had a problem with the guy sleeping under the tree. There was a clipboard and something else there. I did that like really late in the first playthrough because I didn't see it. I'd like skipped that bit or something. And the narration I got there was like, what is he going on about? And then the second time I got it because I knew that it was there. As soon as I went up those big stairs, I picked that up. And that was obviously in the correct order. And what he said at that point made sense. And I was like, oh, okay. He's talking about some guy under a tree or whatever it happened to be. But yeah, the first time I was like, what is he going on about?
Yeah.
So I don't know if they need to, well, they clearly need to fix that, but.
I always wonder if that was one that was fixed, because I didn't notice anything quite like that, but I'm not sure. I'll check.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, Lewis, did the narration go in the same order for you the second time? Because I didn't notice it, but it might have. I did repeat most of the park because I soft locked the game, so I was about an hour and a half in. Although I did a lot less wandering around the second time because I was just watching a video and playing along with it. So I didn't notice that.
I didn't quite notice that, but I may have just not been paying enough attention to that. There is a lot of changes in the 1.01 update, and I'm trying to see if any of them might relate to that. I mean, there's a lot of like things like, added an additional dialogue on Artem's memory end, and little things like that. Fixed typos in the credits. But I'm not sure I see anything related to that.
So I was going to ask you guys too, did you guys catch who the president, leader, whatever, of the institution was? Okay, so
I can't remember his name, but I know his voice and I know which character we were referring to.
he's not actually a character. So there's one of the mementos you get is from this guy named Dr. Gerasimov, and he's like, oh, I think I have an ethical problem with what we're doing here, Ross. And he's in Ross's office. And Ross has these notes that are scattered throughout, and these are the non-mandatory ones that are somewhat hard to find. Why weren't those the mandatory ones? They often had the most valuable information or the most interesting information to me.
Yeah, there definitely should have been automatic narration while moving into new areas a lot more, I think.
Empathy Path of Whispers has the exact opposite problem that Virginia had. Virginia was like the most linear, like to the point where it won't let you leave a room until the music is at the right point, like level of linear. And this game thinks it's linear, but really it isn't.
Yeah.
Which is weird. Lewis, I think you were going to say something. You had a thought.
No, sorry. I'm reading through stuff and trying to think through, because I mean, I kind of agree with you on that this game, its biggest issue is that its non-linearity makes it really difficult to follow. I mean, I like stories with kind of non-direct storytelling, reverse storytelling, like in To the Moon, I always find fascinating. What happens when you tell the story backwards.
When it's done well.
Yeah. And I think if this story had 5 characters, it would have been a lot better. But the fact that it has, 55. I don't know.
I think if this game had 5 characters and they all had portraits that appeared, maybe like
RPG style?
Yeah, like not even animated, just a drawn portrait. I played a game called Valley, which I thought about doing for story mode, but I ended up just playing through it off stream and probably won't do it for story mode. It was made by the guys who made Slender the Arrival, which is weird, but you're basically like Tree Sonic. It's in first person. It's kind of awesome. You're a mech that runs really fast and you spawn trees. It's very strange, but it's got like these little dialogue. It's got story and it's got dialogue, and it's like this weird science thing in this lost valley, and like the Fountain of Youth and other stuff. There's like just static images that appear like in the top right of your screen when people are talking. It's a painting essentially, and they're posed, and you know who's talking, even though the voices sound kind of similar. I think there's 2 voice actors in that entire game, even though there's like 5 or 6 characters. You know exactly who's talking because there's an image there. I think that would have helped a lot.
I mean, everyone's dead, right? So why couldn't the machine in your hand have intercepted the face of the person or something along that lines? I mean, it was a waveform. It could have done something crazy with showing their face or animated something. I don't know. There's
2 other games that I can think of where everybody's dead. One of them isn't out yet. One of them is Everybody's Gone to the Rapture, which is a game I would like to do on this show at some point, by the way, which is from the people who made Dear Esther. And that game has fully 3D models, but they're essentially like see-through ghosts almost. Apparently that game has its own issues, but they're like see-through ghosts, and they play out in a 3D space. So it seems to this game seems to be trying to, from what I know about Everybody's Gone to the Rapture, this game seems to be trying to do a similar type thing, except only in dialogue, and you don't have that 3D thing that you can walk around and look at and almost interact with, even though it's just essentially a cutscene playing out in the world. And that goes a long way to make it easier to tell who is who in the world, because at least you have a idea of what this character looks like.
Yeah. You know what's funny? This game went like way out of its way to not show a single person in its environment, except for one instance.
The
In
gun
Act
shot.
1, one of the very first flashbacks you get is the woman holding up the gun
Yeah.
to the man.
That actually,
And they represent the man as this humanoid shape made out of static. It's really weird looking, and it's the only time I ever used that. In fact, it's the only ever time you see a humanoid figure at all in the game.
And
It
you have
almost
to
makes
shoot
me-
him, which is really confusing.
Yeah, the dialogue kind of indicates that maybe he went mad or something, and that's why he had to be shot, but that's too early in the game to make any sense of it.
Because those two people were the parents of the girl that fell off the cliff.
Yes, question mark? Because
Think so?
because in this facility, Salma has this thing where she tells Joyce to go run off to mommy. There's another character, Dr. Maeda, Rio or something, that I think is her biological mother. It's not really clear though.
Because the downstairs of that house did have a setup. Didn't it say like they were practicing medicine or something, but they weren't really sure what medicine it was?
Yeah.
'Cause
Yeah, they-
downstairs was set up with like a bed and there was a tray with like stuff on it.
Yeah, they said there were doctors, but they didn't say, what type of doctor. There's also another part, and this is actually something I didn't even catch until someone I was playing, watching me had pointed out. But there's a line from that girl, Joyce, where she basically says, "Mom won't tell me where mommy is," and it seems to indicate that she has two moms, which doesn't help with the confusion like at all.
I think that, but Pavel and Salma, I don't think are Joyce's parents, but I think they're acting parents. That makes sense.
Right, okay.
I think.
Because hadn't he just come back from like an army or something? He had like an army
Yeah.
bag upstairs, and there was I can't
There
really
were
remember.
army
This is-
bags everywhere in this game.
There was
Yeah,
military.
what was with the resistance that we never really found out?
There was several
anything
groups. There
about?
was a resistance, or like an uprising resistance, which we saw spray paint in the train station for. There was the military that was trying to get people out safely, and then there was another resistance that I don't think we actually encountered, which was only referenced fighting the military.
And don't forget the resistance in Eaglewood that was resisting Eaglewood and moved to the cliffside.
that. And then there's a
Basically, I
cult.
think the theme of this whole thing is protest. Like, it's basically going around and watch people protest, other people protest, and protest. Someone blew up a bridge.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this game is trying to do too much.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I might be stating the obvious here, but
Mm-hmm.
I think we can just look at Lewis's list of characters and be like, so for a game with that many characters, games can have that many characters for sure. Those games should be 30 hours long. This is a game that if you don't get any bugs and manage to get through the game, should probably take you 4 hours.
It took me 5 hours
Yeah, 4
without
to
any
5.
major bugs my first time through, but I was also trying to get as much as I could. Like, I didn't go for 100%, but I probably got somewhere between 85 and 90% of the dialogue.
I think that this game outstayed its welcome. I think if this game was about an hour and 40 minutes, 2 hours, and was much more streamlined and a lot shorter, more linear, maybe not even open, no open environments, just, you go from place to place. Keep the scanner in, that thing was fine. I'd be fine with, doing little puzzles here and there. Maybe make the scanner a little bit more interesting, something like what Mott said with, having faces popping in or something, or maybe even scanning ghosts. That would be cool if like something was walking around at one point. That would help with the atmosphere and make things feel more alive. Like you shine the scanner on, say, like the campgrounds and you see people playing. That would be cool. Something weird like that.
I mean, the scanner could have had colors, right? Everything on the scanner was blue, I think, like a light white bluish color.
I thought
If
they were
each
kind of
person-
greenish.
Was it green? I can't
It was
remember.
like
When
a
you got the
greeny
thing
color.
on it, it was green, but they had blue arrows to indicate which direction if you weren't over it, I think.
Yeah.
It was
I feel
weird.
like if every different plot line had a different color, so you could play them in order, maybe.
Ooh.
Because there was normally like 5 going on at once, right? Like
Or-
you could pick up in different orders and get different bits of story.
Or even put like names.
Yeah, I mean, if you could just like follow one at a time and then get the story from that one and then move on to the next one, maybe. But that's going to take longer because you have to go around. So I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe if it was more linear. One thing I noticed is, so as we mentioned before, those mementos, the required mementos, appear in pods. So about 5 or 6 will appear, and then there's a flashback, and then another 5 or 6 to appear, and then another flashback, etc., etc. And they can be really scattered. I think one of the last ones in Act 3, there are some mementos down in the sewers. I think there's one kind of on what I called level 2, since they're basically 3 above ground levels. And there was one way off in the corner in the laboratory. And that was just too far to have a good sense of where I'm going. That was just all over the place. And I think if they had kept them bunched as a way to kind of direct the player, like they did kind of do that at the very end of the game. In the beginning of Act 5, you end up in this big valley, and you know which way to go, because if you pull out your scanner, all of the arrows point in the same direction. And
I went the other way.
I did too, actually.
Really?
well, I mean, I did just to check for optional stuff, but you know when you pull out the scanner that the stuff's that way. And other than the one that comes a little bit early, they're all within dialogue's distance of each other. They're all within right there.
I
And
think
so
that area.
if the game was more like that, it might have worked
Yeah.
better.
that area.
I mean, it didn't have to be right next to each other, just in the same area.
I think they could have also just shrunk a lot of the zones. I think that the train station, I think, was the worst offender, just because, like the ceiling in the train station looked pretty cool, but everything else, it's essentially just like a flat warehouse with like a huge set of train tracks, and if you jump down onto the train tracks at the wrong spot, you have to walk all the way around the building to get back up.
Did anybody else try to go just walk through the tunnel that you have to get the train through?
Yep, and he goes, not now or something.
There's nothing left for you that way, I think.
Yeah.
That's so pointless, though. It's like you could literally just walk there. Whatever, I guess.
I think the train station just didn't need to be in the game at all. Like, was there any decent plot lines that you discovered?
Well, you had to activate the device there, according to the plot, that you had to have all of the
I mean, that
devices
was the
active, and
only
there's one in the
thing.
basement.
They could have just had one less machine. Come on.
I mean,
Technically, yes.
if they just
but-
made it way smaller, I think that what the train station did do is it built atmosphere in a way. You got the whole uprising thing. There was all the civilians talking, people trying to get out of the city. You got a little bit more information about the city. The whole, let's blow up the way out so that they have to let us leave, stuff like that. That was interesting, but I think that area was just way too big. I spent more time in the train station than I think I did in the rest of the game because of how big that zone is, and just
I got stuck
backtracking.
in the train station.
Yeah.
I think this was mentioned earlier on. This game, it holds your hand the whole way through with that machine. Like, that machine will show you 99% of the stuff you need. And then there's just that one last thing. And this happened, like I said earlier, in every single mission. That last piece to move on, it wouldn't tell you where it was. I spent most of my time looking for that last piece, and it was hidden somewhere in a corner, or it was an irrelevant puzzle or something.
They usually try to give you a hint if you had seen it before. Like at the end of Act 1, it shows you the thing opening, but you have to know where that was.
Yeah, I had no idea where that was.
But it doesn't make sense because everything you need to move on is on the machine, except the last one. It's like, oh, we've helped you with the first 99% of this mission. Now, on your own, go on, find it.
I'll say that, we were talking about getting lost in Act 2 in the train station, but I was able to mostly keep my bearings there. The place I had issue with was Act 1. Atlas Park, it's just wooded, grassy area, and the fact that there are, 2 levels that look almost identical to each other, and the fact that, it was just so layered, and you had to be, like, at the steps if you want to go to the different layer, and I got lost way too much there. I think I spent that was the act I had the most time spent.
Yeah. So the problem that I had was that usually the game indicates important things by lighting them up or making them like glitchy looking. The puzzles, like the other puzzles, like for example, there was the electric diagram puzzle, and then there was the opening the pipes and eagle view puzzle.
Yeah,
I missed those. I missed those. I was like, oh, I was supposed to turn these pipes because the game has taught me to look for things that are glowing or glitchy looking, and then they just don't do that once. It was frustrating. Like the pipes puzzle, I spent about 30 to 40 minutes just wandering around town. Like, what am I missing? All the glowing things are in this place that's locked.
Yeah, I had that exact same thing.
I was able to figure that out pretty quickly because I have seen that type of puzzle before. But I wanted to say I realized there are 4 things you can get. There's the mandatory mementos, optional mementos, the notes, and then there's the key items. And you have an inventory, and you have to manage your inventory and do sort of a point-and-click adventure thing. You have to find the item where it goes, and those items don't appear on your radar either. So you need to get the effigy, which is next to the clipboard. And if you miss that, you just lose it. And
I think
you'll have to hunt it down. And yeah, that was a problem. I think in that area, you need like 4 items to progress. You need the effigy, you need the transistor. Well, you need the transistor to get to that area. I couldn't find the transistor. You need the core. You need the antenna, which took me a bit to figure out. You need the schematics. That first act requires way too many items.
Yeah, I got stuck in I think it was the last one in the actual compound area. I was looking around forever for this last piece I needed. They didn't tell me what it was. It was not on my machine. And it was a sandwich on a table in the cafeteria. I don't know if anyone else had that.
I got that by accident. I just saw it. I was like, click. Oh, that's the thing I can click.
Yeah. That was the last thing I needed to move on, and it didn't tell me I needed it. There was no indication in my notes, in my journal, anywhere that I needed to find a sandwich. But I think it was for I needed the DNA off the sandwich to go to the scientific machine to replicate it or something.
I don't know why this is funny. It's funny to me.
I was trying to shove this thing in this machine for like 40 minutes. Like, what do I need? And then it was just a sandwich on the table in the cafeteria.
Yeah,
that I happened to find by randomly going in there.
Yeah.
Again,
you know what I think this game needs? This game needs a written walkthrough. All that exists right now are some really terrible quality YouTube walkthroughs, and if Pixelnight were to do anything, if I had to suggest Pixelnight to do like one thing to help this game, it would be to write up a walkthrough, like pretend you're a user, put it to the Steam community pages.
Yeah,
just create a fake user account. Don't say it's you. Just create a walkthrough, because without a walkthrough, this game is really unplayable.
Yeah.
I mean,
silence.
This pains me because I love this industry, okay? And I really, really, really like this subgenre of games. And it's very clear when something didn't come out the way that it was intended. And as I've said before, there are really neat ideas here. And that is painful, Sometimes you get Abzu in What Remains of Edith Finch, and sometimes you get this in Evangeline.
I mean, I at least came away from Evangeline kind of liking it.
I do want to bring up Evangeline for a moment and just say that Evangeline is also a game that you might want to play. You could do it in a 20-minute episode. It's like $6. Number one, it's $6. Okay. Number
20 minutes?
It's like 20 to 30 minutes.
Jesus.
Which I think is fair, honestly. But that's me. I'm weird.
$6 for 20 minutes? Really?
Yeah, sure. I'd pay $6 for an episode of a TV show. Why not?
I spent 78 minutes on that one looking at Steam, so for what it's worth.
If you want 100% it, yeah. But That is a kind of broken game that probably wasn't made in a lot of time. It was probably made in maybe 3 months, but it's short, concise, and it gets its point across, and it doesn't outstay its welcome, because by the time the mechanics are starting to get a little bit monotonous, it's over. This game, its mechanics have outstayed its welcome about an hour in, or less even, and you're just lost. And you've paid $20 for a game that doesn't feel like it's mechanically worth the price that you've paid, and you're just tripping over yourself going, this game is broken in ways. Yes, there's an intriguing world here underneath the weirdly written dialogue and piles of mess, but I don't know.
Yeah, does anybody else have anything particularly important that they wanted to touch on? Because I've kind of covered all the things that I've had problems with. And I mean, I didn't really cover anything that I liked because there wasn't that much, but...
What did you like?
There was one accent that I thought was done very well. I think it was Gerasimov. I found that his accent was the best of all of them. So I guess that was good. The soundtrack was actually quite good. There was a sound design problem though in the 5th act. There was a really ultra low quality like wind effect.
I think that was intentional.
Yeah, it took away from it for me, but
I thought it was kind of cool. Actually, I think the audio and some of the visuals in this game are by far the best.
The aesthetics are great. The music, the visuals. At
the same time, I can bash the aesthetics because there is a lot of reused assets. When you're, especially I noticed this the most in Act 1, when you're going, like when you're in the park and you're going in and out of those buildings, every single stairwell has the same collapsed HVAC system in the middle.
Yeah.
So I lost track of which building was which and which building I had to go to get what item, because those staircases are all the same and they're broken in the exact same way. And it's extremely obvious when you're going down the one staircase to get into the sewers, because it's the exact same staircase as the building like right over there that you were just in.
Yeah, I got lost finding those sewers so many times.
I mean, I had to watch a walkthrough to figure out where the beginning of the sewers was again. I always followed the right wall because I knew there were no loops, and I just would follow the right wall and I'd making my way back. And this goes right back to my problem of this is the issue of repeating assets isn't helped by the fact that you're staring at your doohickey the entire time.
I think for me, I would say the graphics in this game, or the art design, or the style of the game, I liked it. Maybe it was used in the wrong way in the first episode or the first mission. Some people got confused, like mentioned earlier, whether it was a dream state or whatever it was. I would say overall sound design was pretty good. I'm also going to say they probably spent like 80% of their budget on the voice actors in this game.
I don't know, you can get pretty cheap voice actors,
man. Well, I wouldn't say they were cheap voice actors. I think they were just used badly. I think they were good voice actors. I would say they did a good job, but they just were used badly.
Some of the dialogue was a little rough.
Yeah, I would say the dialogue was pretty bad. Maybe they were forced to use accents they weren't too comfortable with, but you could tell they were good voice actors. They weren't cringy or terribly bad. They just had bad accents. But
I think
I guess if you're told to do that. But yeah, other than that, I would say if the storyline was more linear and easier to follow, and maybe the game was like an hour and a half, 2 hours shorter, it would be pretty good. And the price point's disgusting in my point. I think 16 quid, which is what, like 20?
It was 20 bucks for me, and I didn't get it on sale.
I don't like that price. Like, I struggle with that price for this game.
You know, and if I had to kind of give my final thoughts on this game, I wouldn't really say I hated it. I mean, it took me 10 hours of playing this game to feel like I had any real understanding of the story. And, you know, I kind of liked it, you know, what I saw there. And, you know, if it was just the fact that it's a broken game, I'm not sure I'd have any real problems with that. I mean, I liked Contrast, and that certainly was not a perfect game. And they're certainly patching it. But the fact that the story is so scattershot and it takes like 8 hours just to understand it, and there's a lot of kind of downtime, and it's very easy to get lost. And I can't really say I'd recommend this to a friend. And the problem is that's not something you can patch. That's something you can not something you can really patch out of the game. You're just gonna have to work with it, really.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll recommend broken games to a friend as long as it doesn't outstay its welcome. That's like why I'd say I would recommend Evangeline to somebody, even though that game is broken in many ways. Like you can make the garbage can fly in that game.
Well, that was just funny.
Yeah. But I think that this game suffers as well because there is some really cool, and this is Act 1 is a travesty. And the reason I say that is because the coolest looking thing in the game, you only see for about 2 minutes. And then you're on top of it. But that thing looks so cool. Atlas Park looks incredible. That thing looks amazing. It's this giant god like holding this huge park on his back, standing inside of a sprawling city of death. Like that is a really cool visual piece.
It looks cool, and then you spend the next half an hour to an hour looking at trees and grass and sewer.
That are all copied and pasted. I don't know.
Yeah, to go from that to the train station was kind of like meh. And then like you leave the train station, you go to that other really nice looking place,
The Eagle View.
Eagle View is nice. Yeah.
and then you go from that to the valley. No, you go underground to the crazy people's hideout, which is just that underground with not a lot there.
Yeah.
And then you go to the valley. The valley was really nice looking for about 5 seconds until you go up the ladder and it's irrelevant.
I think the
like the beginning of Act 3, the beginning of Act 5, and the beginning of Act 1 were all visually impressive, but they just
the problem
were too short, I guess.
The game as a whole, when you step back and look at it, the art design is really good, but I think calling it visually impressive is unfair because the texture quality in this game is garbage. Like when you if you rub your face up against a wall and look at the ground, it looks like a game from 2008. That
I mean, the graphics may not be great, but that doesn't mean it can't look good.
It's not impressive looking. The art design is good, but I
can't remember that. I'd have to go back in and
areas like the train station killed the graphical fidelity for me. Like,
yeah, I didn't like the train station at all. I thought that was horrible.
Eagle View killed my frame rate.
What?
Yeah, no, I had huge frame rate stutters in Eagle View.
Interesting.
If I was on one corner of the map and I looked to the other corner, I would have frame rate issues.
To be fair, you are loading some pretty big environments.
Yeah, no, I mean, certainly, but it should at least be able to handle what it's loaded.
I don't think I had any performance issues other than the game breaking bugs, but performance-wise, I think it ran solid. I don't remember anything that was
Lewis plays on a potato.
bad. Oh,
Actually,
okay.
I played that one on my computer downstairs, which has an i5 and a 970. So
not bad.
A piece of toast.
It should be able to run that. I don't know. Maybe they need to work on optimization, but I don't know.
It's the Unreal Engine, I believe. I think they say somewhere it uses the Unreal Engine, and that one is not an engine that is very well optimized for low-end devices.
It's not running on Unreal, it's running on Unity.
That's what I was thinking.
Then why does it have the Epic EULA? I'm pretty sure it's Unreal.
It's probably Unreal.
No,
It's Unreal. It says in the credits.
Actually, no, I can tell you right now it's Unreal because I'm just like cluing back into the memory of when I first turned it on, and I got a pop-up saying, Epic Games would like to connect to the internet, and I was really confused for a second there and realized, oh, it's the Unreal Engine.
Also, you could just go to the EULA and read the first part of the first line, which says Empathy Path of Whispers includes the Unreal Engine code.
I wonder, can someone start the game up right now? I wonder if it has the Unreal logo at the beginning. Aren't you supposed to put
that's
that
what
there?
I was thinking. I don't remember that, and
No.
I'm pretty sure every game that runs Unreal has that really obnoxious Unreal 4 logo. Yeah. See, I don't remember.
It wasn't there. It was in the credits. And it's free to work in until you start trying to make a profit off of it, at which point they take 5%
Of
Profit.
profits.
Oh my god, 5%. Jeez.
5 plus
Can you just-
Steam's 30.
Or proceeds, I think, technically.
Can you just pay up front and not have to do that?
Probably.
No. That's what the Unity engine's for. Unity offers that.
Yes.
Unity also has a free version. But
Yeah.
And that's limited to revenue. I think once you hit a certain revenue, you have to pay for the pro version.
yeah,
5% of 900 sales. Phew.
honestly, 5% of 900 sales minus Steam's 30% cut.
Oh my god. They didn't
I
make
may be
anything.
on top of Steam's cut, so maybe
Did they
5%
pay
of sale
anyone to
Whatever.
play this
It's
game?
it's pointless. They didn't make a lot of money off. Of this game.
They've made like a month's rent for one person off this game, which is depressing. Because
I really did want to like this game, but
Me
it
too.
This wasn't a like crowdsourced or anything, was it?
Nope.
This wasn't. No.
this was just published and put out.
Well, I'm kind of glad. Well, I mean, they put out products. If it was crowdsourced, it probably would have been better all round, really. But
You know,
Yeah.
I'm
for
just,
the record, the publisher is probably taking a bigger cut than
Anybody
Epic
else.
is.
The way a publisher works is the publisher pays the developer to make the game, and then the developer gets part of the proceeds. So, if anything, Iceberg Interactive is getting kicked in the nuts over this one. But anyways, business stuff aside, I'm just gonna say what I usually say with games like this: is please, I just want to see this developer make something else. You know, I'd like to see them get another shot at it. Because there are interesting ideas there. You know, I've said this before about other games that we didn't particularly like, and it's same with Virginia, where we had some mixed opinions on it. I would like to see something else come out of them. I'd like to see them make more creative ideas and try and innovate. Like, if anything, you know, none of us really liked that puzzle mechanic, but it was unique. I've never seen anything like that before. It was unintuitive, backwards, and odd, but, you know,
yeah.
it's a new thing, and that's cool.
Yeah.
Well, they had two unique things. They had the memory system, which they barely used, or the like flashback thing, and the machine. And the machine was good. It got old in like an hour, and the memory thing was underused.
Have you played The Vanishing of Ethan Carter?
No, you're just like throwing out random strings of words at this point.
The Vanishing of Ethan Carter does something very similar to that. It has like a flashback thing, and then there's a bunch of human models that appear, and then you tie the human models together in almost like a Batman detective thing. It's another beautiful walking simulator that I would recommend.
See, I think if this game just had visuals of the characters, it would have made the story easier to follow, and then maybe we would have had different outcomes to this game. But because there was nothing from the beginning to the end that helped you with the story at all, other than the journal, which who's going to read the journal? If you're not going to read the notes when you first find them, you're not going to use a journal. They missed the mark with this game completely, I think. And it's a shame because they had all the things there to make a great game. I think they just did it in the wrong order.
And
I really do believe that. Like, there's some really cool themes in here. The aesthetic was cool. The themes were cool, but it's a bad game.
it is a bad game. I will not deny that. It is a bad game.
If I had to make one suggestion to the devs, it would be to streamline it. Streamline the story, make it simpler to follow, have less characters, and try to make it more linear. You know, streamline the gameplay, make there's less hunting around for stuff.
Put a bigger focus on those epic set pieces that you've built because they look fantastic. Just let us look at them more.
Yeah, streamline the set pieces, make it so you're actually seeing more and not hunkering down on the thing you want to look at, essentially.
Yeah.
Streamline.
Should we wrap this up then?
Yeah, I think so. You look frustrated. You're like, let's end this. But yeah, no, I think we're just kind of going in circles
It's
now.
a long episode. Yeah.
Hour and 30 minutes. We're doing pretty good, I think. It's been fun.
I mean, it was a long game. So.
Fair.
Longer than most of the games. Speaking of length, you mentioned that like 6 hours for $20 is rough for you. I will pay $20 for a 2-hour game if the quality is high enough. So that's just me. I think What Remains of Edith Finch is worth the price asking, and that's more than this. And it's way shorter. Because the level of quality of that game is just perfect. But anyway, Also, Inside, another example. Damn near perfect game. But anyways, this has been fun. This is Story Mode. If you watch this for the very first time and you're in chat, thank you very much. I have no idea how you made it through that. But if you're listening to the audio version, I don't know how you found it because nobody listens to the audio version. Well, it gets 1 or 2 downloads. So to those 2 people who download it, cool. If it's Lewis and Eggman, then I'm sad. And
No, I don't download podcasts.
Yes.
I do not listen. I do not watch back this podcast.
I know
I don't like the sound of my voice.
I know Jafrick does, so I've gotten used to the sound of my voice. And then so shout outs to our 1 subscriber on Google Play. But anyways, yeah, does anybody have anything they want to shout out or promote? Let's just start with our guest host, Mott. What do you do? Where can people find you on the internet for the people that watch this?
I do YouTube videos on YouTube. At Mock Games on YouTube.
What games?
There's videos there if you want to watch it. Lots of Planet Coaster.
Okay, so you do all kinds of games because it was sounding like Blind was
Yeah.
recommending games to you. You do more than just like story games.
I do predominantly Planet Coaster and then other games, and I've just started doing reviews as well.
Planco pays the bills, but you throw out stuff at people and hope it sticks.
And this game was the first review I did, and I think I've learned a lot from reviewing this game way too early through my playthrough. If anyone's watched that, I was highly liking the game at the point I made that review, and then it released and it was like a lot worse than it was before release.
Interesting.
So yeah, I need to make sure that I play through the whole games from now on, which I do. So
Or just call it a first impressions.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'll do that.
Eggman, do you have anything you want to shout out or mention?
Not a whole ton going on. I don't create a lot of content other than this myself. If you hang around afterwards, I will regale you with tales of the Japan Culture Fair that I went to yesterday. And yeah.
Oh, there was
Sounds
2
good.
pinball machines in this game.
What?
In the office there was.
Where
2
are they?
pinball-
I need to play this.
No,
No, I-
Can you use them?
no,
I don't think so.
no,
Oh.
and they're not real pinball machines either. They're anyways.
I know there was a snooker table.
It's in the lunchroom in the lab.
I feel disappointed in myself.
Lewis, do you have anything you want to shout out or mention?
I'll say what I say every time. I have a Twitch channel, twitch.tv/LRFLEW. It's, below me here somewhere. Just if you follow that one, I should get back to streaming eventually. I'm not going to say a time this time because every single time I've blown past it without getting back into streaming. I hope to do some things, some speed running, some game dev, fun stuff.
When you get a computer that works.
Yep, that's pretty much the contingency.
Yeah, and this is my Twitch channel. If you're listening to the audio version, once again, I don't know how you found this. One thing that I would like to talk about with this show, though, is we have a Twitter account, which is @RealStoryMode. So if you follow that Twitter, I'll put out tweets related to the show. The show does air once a month, although we did have to delay the last episode, so this one was kind of rushed. I don't know what we'll be doing for our next game. I'll announce that on Twitter at some point, and guests and stuff will follow. Also, this is my Twitch channel, so if you're here, you probably know who I am, but I'm blind and I stream a lot of management games on Twitch. And I have a good emote, I think. Yeah, we're gonna, to people watching live, we're gonna switch over to IRL now. If you are listening to the recorded version of that, well, you're out of luck, because I don't record those VODs. We're gonna switch over to IRL. So thank you very much to everybody who watched Story Mode. This is where you say goodbye, people. I'm muting us. Bye.